Hello, welcome to Hat Trick. I'm Jordan Dollar Coltman. I'm joined by Elliott Tanti and Braydon Dollar Coltman. It is what is it, like 6 days, 5 days away, I guess now. You're listening to this on the Monday, 5 days from the trade deadline. We're going to talk about that. We got lots to go through. Busy weekend in the world of sports and some fun for you too. Before we do that, really, really quickly, obviously the F1 season's back. We had our first episode of Pit Stop, and Elliott, you must be just on cloud nine. Max Verstappen increasing the gap from last year. Although I will say, after him, including his teammate, everything's kind of concertinaed together. There's a fun big word for you. But you must be feeling pretty good, right? As the biggest Max Verstappen and Christian Horner defender we have on this show.
Yeah, it's a concertina of elation over here in the Tanti household. Long live Red Bull.
And comfortable with the fact that Red Bull has just decided not to move forward with their investigation any further into Christian Horner and the illicit text messages with his former assistant.
Yeah, I mean, they are who we said they were.
All right, let's get to it. Here's topic one. Yeah, we're not talking about that one on this show. If you want to hear more about that, go listen to the Pit Stop podcast. Tyler and I discussed a little bit. We'll talk about it again this week following the Bahrain Grand Prix. Braydon, we're going to talk some NHL Oilers news. Obviously, they had a very great evening this evening. We're recording this Sunday night against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pretty dominant performance. Nice to see a backup goalie come in after Stewart already had a pretty great game the other night against Seattle. And then you have your backup goalie also only allowing a goal. And it seems to be the formula when the Oilers can prevent themselves from being scored on for 2 or less goals, they seem to win every hockey game, which is great. It's a simple formula. They just got to stick to it. And look, when they've played well, that's how they've found success. Before we get to what they will be looking to do on Friday for yourself, we haven't been talking in a few weeks. Like where's your sort of feeling right now on the Oilers? Are we feeling comfortable with how they're playing? Are you feeling worried about anything with how they're playing? Where's sort of, wellness check, I guess?
I feel good about what's going on. It's like I said in the last episode, I'm thrilled to see depth scoring. We're seeing, our third, fourth lines actually producing points, which is just fantastic. And the defense is it's holding up. We saw a switch here, I think tonight for the first time with Desharnais and Nurse, and I kind of liked what I was seeing.
Elliott, I'll ask you again before we get to the trade deadline part of it. You tend to be a slightly more cynical or skeptical Oilers fan, at least amongst the three of us. Where are you right now? We've seen a team that obviously had some pretty phenomenal run of success there with back-to-back win streaks, and then they kind of they stumbled a little bit after that loss in Vegas. Got back on their feet. We're seeing a team, at least that, as I say, when they keep the scoring down, seems to be very successful. But where are you? How are you? Where's your sort of radar on where they're at right now?
Yeah, it's tough to argue with the results right now. It's like fourth straight win, a bunch of wins at home. The team is playing well. Hyman's having an outstanding season, and that continues. But I think it all comes down to defense and goaltending. And right now they're getting good defense and good goaltending. And that's what we're seeing in terms of, the outcomes and success. You've mentioned that. I have a little bit of apprehension about just how many games they're going to have to play over the next 6 weeks to close out their season and what's going to be left in the tank for the playoffs. That would be my only concern. That's cynical Elliott talking. But other than that, they're rolling, they're playing well. I think they're incredibly well coached. I've been very impressed with Knobloch and what he's been able to do, or as Britain says, Knobcock. And that I think the line shifts, and I think Paul Coffey's influence on the defensive squad has really, been good, and we're reaping the benefits of those people. So all in all, I think it's like 8, 9 out of 10. You have to be happy. Since the loss in Calgary, they played well.
So it's a good time just transition there for me. Let's talk about the trade deadline. And I say it's a good transition because we'll start going backwards a little bit. We've seen a couple of big dominoes fall, and I think it will impact the Oilers based strictly on the fact that many of those dominoes have a relationship to the Pacific Division. First off, Calgary clearly in a position where unlikely at this point they're going to find themselves in a playoffs position when all the chips fall. They're certainly, riding a bit of a hot streak right now, but they've already started moving some pieces out. We've seen that already. Lindholm obviously going to Vancouver earlier, right before the All-Star break, and now most recently Chris Tanev going to Dallas. When you look at what else has happened in the Pacific, Vancouver's made quite a few moves on top of the Lindholm one. But now Dallas is in the Central. You've got some movement around whether or not Vegas or LA is going to try to decide whether or not they're buyers here. Where do the Oilers need to improve most, Braydon, when you look at how their playoff picture shapes up?
Well, we've been fortunate enough not to see injuries happen for the Oilers in the last couple of years, and I mean, you can't get any deeper than adding another scoring winger. I think that they're going to have to. I know that they were probably pretty hot on trying to get Tanev in, but that would be an impressive addition to that back end. But they're gonna want to improve in as many areas as they can. I think that they've determined that goaltending is one that they're gonna kind of hold pat on. But I think some more depth wing scoring is gonna improve their chances in the playoffs.
Do you have any specific targets you would be going after if you were sitting in Ken
Well,
Holland's chair?
man, this is the thing is like the assets going back. That's I mean that's the game. I would love for Gensel to happen. I don't think it's gonna happen. I would love for a David Perron, an Anthony Duclair, an Anthony Math, like one of those like I mean we've got a plethora of Kane and Fogel and Perry, like these rugged get in the paint, chip away. Hyman's 40 goal scorer now, and he's that sort of mold, and it's working for our team. So adding a player like that, I would love to see Anthony Duclair and Ferraro come back from San Jose.
All right, Elliot, I'll turn it to you too then. Where for you are the biggest Oiler priorities or the pieces that you think are most critical for Ken Holland to shore up going into a playoff run?
Yeah, I'm not that far off from Braydon. I do think they are going to add a defenseman, like a 7-8, maybe a 6-7. That would be good. I don't have a name for you in that sense, but that just tends to be kind of like Holland's move is like get an extra defenseman at the deadline. I also do agree that another scoring winger would help this team. I think it would round out the top six. The name I would throw out there is Tyler Toffoli, who's still got it. And I think just more likely to happen based solely in the fact that he's with the Devils and it's the Eastern Conference and it's easier to make a deal. But that tends to matter less and less these days now. Like, teams are more willing to trade in their division and in their conference than they have in the past. But that would be the name that I would target. Yeah, I think they could use a little bit more scoring and a little bit more depth there. And, they're going to get a 7-8 defenseman. Lots of people in Edmonton right now are talking about 3 names. So maybe, you've got someone going out that's actually, a regular everyday starter here. That would be, I would, if you put the over under on 2.5 in terms of new names that are going to be here after Friday, I feel like we might be over. Holland is very good at the trade deadline. Think about last year. Think about every year he's been the GM. He's always brought someone in. Has it always worked out? Absolutely not. But Ekholm was a slam dunk trade. So that would be, I think we're going to see 3 names this year. They're going for it. It's his last year. That would be my guess.
The reason that Ekholm was so successful as a trade is that there was term on him. Like you look at these rental options, and yeah, they're going to help you this year, but after that, we're down assets. Look at how good the Nick Bukestad rental was for us. It was great, but we lost a prospect in Michael Kesselring, who's now Arizona's number 2 defenseman. Like it's this give and take of how much are we willing to give away for the 1 year chance. It'd be great for them to bring in another sort of heavy hitter with term. I'm looking at Colton Parayko. I'm looking at guys like the challenge with that though in the long term is how are you going to fit them under the cap?
And obviously it's how you're fitting them under the cap comes into the conversation Elliot's having, which is like, what are the pieces that when you have a piece going out, what's coming back in? Obviously for Ekholm with the Tyson Barrie piece, there was we all had some questions around how that was going to play out. We were worried a little bit about the power play. Obviously Evan Bouchard solved that problem. I would say this is, I guess, the question maybe to flip it around on, like, for you, Braydon, what are the current NHL everyday players on the Oilers that you think could be removed from the equation and not necessarily, I I don't know, cost the Oilers success currently? Obviously it depends on what the return is. That's a key piece here, but let's just say, for the sake of saying it, there's some clear untouchables.
Yeah.
If everybody else is on the table, where are you comfortable seeing guys go?
Current NHL players, Brett Kulak would be one name. I think he's sitting around 2.75. We've got Fogel, who's just north of 3 million. Like, these are productive guys, but I think if you could bring in somebody with term that had a bit of salary retention coming back as well, there's flexibility there for sure. I would say those would be the places that I would start. I mean, pipe dream, Hail Mary would be to shed yourself of Jack Campbell, but I just don't think that any team's going to help you out with that one.
Elliott, same names for you, or is there other pieces that you would be looking to say sayonara to?
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the bigger Hail Mary, Campbell or Connor Brown? Like, that would be the other one that I'd say, like, okay, well, this clearly has not worked. Although I still do hold out hope that Connor Brown's going to get one empty net goal and then score 10 goals in 3 games or something.
All in the playoffs. Turn
Yeah.
into Fernando Pisani.
Yeah, Fernando Pisani, or even, Yamamoto last year as well, too. Yeah, I mean, I think those names are all good. I think you're talking, if you're going to do something substantive with term, which would be ideal, given that this is not the first year of the window. It's arguably the second, and there's probably at least 2 more to it. Then you're talking about Broberg, right? Who's not a roster player, and I appreciate that. Is a significant asset with significant value. And it's the first overall pick. Like, I mean, I think it's time, guys. You've been arguing this for years, and I'm finally on board. Like, let's sell the farm, literally and figuratively. It's time to go. Between Perry, Kane, obviously Draisaitl coming up on a contract year, McDavid the year after that. They've got to make hay. Make hay while the sun's out, as my former
But
colleague.
if he's such an asset, like, you can't just be flipping him for a rental.
No, and I think that's why I'd say, if we're talking about term, that's the kind of thing I'd be willing to do for sure. Is exactly that. And like I said, like, I think there's the window here is not just this year. There's added pressure on this year, I would say, because of the looming contracts for Draisaitl and McDavid. But a rental's still a rental at the end of the year, or at the end of the day.
So let's just for a second take our Oiler hats off. Where else do you think, who else in the league do you anticipate may be the biggest movers and shakers come Friday? Obviously, leading up to this point, the Canucks have been one of the most active teams. I don't know how much more they intend to do come Friday, but when you look at who else is out there on the rise or on the downslope, like, where do you think there's going to be action? And are the Oilers going to be one of those teams, or is it 1 or 2 moves max? Like, where do you think that action could be, Braydon? I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of on the spot with you.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to make 2+ moves. They've had a record or a history of doing that. They're in a position that they need to do that, and I think that they will do that. I think that the teams that are going to be selling as much as they can are San Jose, Washington. I think there's some fringe teams that you're looking at that just, we need a few more games to know where they actually sit. Like, are they actually going to push for a wild card? But I could see Minnesota moving some players. I mean, looked at some of the players in their wing, like Ryan Hartman, Zuccarello. There's some really interesting names available. Arizona's probably going to do their natural flipping of players. Anaheim too has quite a few UFAs. Arizona's an interesting one though, because every single defenseman that they have signed this year is on a 1 year. Every single defenseman is a UFA. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up next week without a single defenseman.
Elliott, you want to take a crack at that one too? Who else do you think is the big movers, shakers out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think all those are good. We've already mentioned the Flames and Tanevs. There's probably more there in terms of what they're doing. That seems like a bit of a retool. I think the Blues, specifically Buchnevich. How do you say this?
Yeah, Buchnevich.
Like, rated as like probably a top 7 trade target in the NHL right now. That's a name there. There's actually a lot more out of the East than the West, surprisingly. But what I feel like is because of the moves of Vancouver specifically, the Golden Knights are going to do something. I think specifically the Pacific Division, it's forcing the Oilers to do something. I think the Oilers could be pretty busy leading up to Friday. I also think, given just the cap constraints, though, and just what's kind of going on in the league, we've seen a couple big moves and some prices set. I think a lot of stuff is going to happen on the trade deadline Friday. Typically, we've seen stuff leading up to it. We haven't seen a lot of that, which always causes like concern, and media people say, "Oh, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen." But I think Friday this year is going to be uncharacteristically busy as teams are wheeling and dealing and retaining salary because they're just taking the best deal that was offered, and there's a feeling that you have to do something because someone else is in your division.
Well, it's funny you should say that. It's what's interesting about this Tanev deal is like, why didn't they wait until they had all the offers coming at
Well,
them
maybe
at
they
once?
felt they did though, Braydon.
But that was such a weak return. I
was surprised by it too.
idea what they were thinking. I mean, a second round pick's great, but I think likely could have gotten a first at the deadline.
I don't know. It's interesting. It may say something about the market that they felt they needed to make that deal early rather than late.
So my question is then, is the Tanev deal an indication that it's a buyer's market or a seller's market?
Probably a buyer's market. They didn't spend enough. They didn't have to spend over what, I mean, they spent less than I expected him to go for. So that would tell me that it's a buyer's market, right? They
Much
got
less
away
than I
with more.
expected, like I don't know much about this prospect, but
Yeah, I think that it's
the
pretty.
Oilers had
It
something
feels
they
like
could have-
that.
they could have
It
offered.
feels like the Stars win that trade on paper to begin with, and that tells you that if they're the buyer, then it's theirs. I would say, but we'll see. I guess.
We also have to mention, like, the Maple Leafs will do something. They always do, and it's always crazy. And
Well, they traded for Labushkin. So they got their seventh defenseman returned. I don't know what they're gonna. I don't know how they. I don't know how they help their team right now.
Well, I think they're one of the few teams that might be interested in a goaltender. I would actually not be surprised if that's where like a Marc-Andre Fleury goes as a depth move for them, because
The Wild said they're not moving him.
well then then it doesn't happen. But teams have said they're not moving somebody
Maybe
until the deal
Campbell.
gets good
Maybe
enough.
Jack Campbell can go back.
one of the things that was interesting about the Ekholm deal was, as Braydon said, we had Bouchard to move into a more significant role on the team. Is there an obvious candidate in Edmonton to take over a role that someone else is playing right
Well,
now?
but
Holloway.
the only way to answer
Holloway
that
is not a third line, fourth line guy. He would produce if he had more time on ice.
But what I'm saying is that question is predicated on where that piece is coming from. Because yes, it would be easy to slot somebody in on the third or fourth line if those are one of the pieces leaving. If it's a top six player, then there's a different conversation. What I would make the argument to be is that we have seen several players be capable of stepping up, because when you have a player like McDavid or you have a guy like Draisaitl, they are able to make those lower level players appear to be top six guys next to them much easier than in other situations. So yes, if you were, let's say, to move on from like a Warren Fogle, if that's the piece that goes out, there are guys below him right now in that depth chart that can still play up in the lineup there, right? You have a bit of, I mean, again, Connor Brown offensively struggling. Yes. Connor Brown defensively, one of the best penalty killers in the league right now. And so fitting up, moving him into a different role, how does that affect what's there? We don't know, but you have Gagne, you just have, and Braydon, as you say, with Holloway, you have depth that's there. I think this is one of the better Oilers teams when it comes to third and fourth line depth we've seen in a very long time, not in terms of having standout guys putting crazy numbers up, but consistency amongst those players. And as Braydon said, lack of injuries has really, really benefited the Oilers. Now, at some point, an injury is coming. That's just the reality of how this is. The hope is it's not severe, and the hope is it's not in the playoffs. But I think it's not wise to expect you're going to get through an 82 game schedule and a playoff. Now, we didn't. I mean, Holloway was injured, but you know what I'm saying? One of those top guys at some point is going to have something happen, and you just have to hope that you've got the depth. What I would say is, and it sounds like this is already the case, because I think Daniel Nugent-Bowman reported it this week, there's no conversation anymore about goaltending. And I think that that's the right approach. This money needs to be spent. The cap needs to be spent in a different way. You have arguably one of the top 10, if not even higher level goaltenders on his best day in Stuart Skinner. when he's on his game, I think he's an elite goaltender or on his way to being so. I know there's a lot of pushback. Oh, he kind of struggled in the playoffs last year. Yeah, he was a rookie. This is year 2. He's got a lot more experience.
2 games away from.
And I would also argue, watching what Calvin Pickard's done when the opportunity's been there, that's a guy that you can at least rely on down the stretch to help, take a little bit of that load off. And that's what he's been doing now. And if you get into a playoff situation where, you're down awkwardly in one of those weird games, you got to pull your goalie to kind of save face. He might be able to help you save, a third period or something there. And worst case scenario, at least you have a goaltender, that could be the UC Markkinen in the worst case scenario.
Hey man, look what Aiden Hill did for the Vegas.
I feel much more comfortable with him back there than we have had in recent years between, the backups that we've been carrying. So that's all beneficial. Anyway, last thoughts, Braydon, before we jump away from it. I know we're still a week away or 5 days away from the actual deadline. Things will change, but
I'm anxiously waiting to see what they're gonna do. I think one of the things I'm most keen to know more about is how many of their like young prospects they're gonna flip. I think draft picks are a little bit more valuable for the Oilers to be moving than having their prospects move at this point. Obviously they're of asset, but like we only have so much cap, and if they're making under $1 million, they're of value to us still. So moving forward, I'm very curious to see how many of the prospects will actually move. No.
The thing
you could do Kulak Broberg though, and
it's funny. I would
Chichar.
give up CC before I gave up Kulak. I think that Kulak is a more valuable defenseman to you because he's a strictly defensive defenseman who like never gets in trouble. You know why you don't think a lot about Kulak? Because you never talk about Kulak.
Yeah,
because he's doing his job.
Yeah, but his time on ice is like 7 minutes.
That's the biggest compliment I think we can play to Darnell Nurse this year. How often have we talked about Darnell Nurse? Nothing, because he's doing his job and staying under the radar. He's not. Yeah. He's not. He's sticking to his task. He's in his lane.
Everyone's accepted his $9 million salary hit.
It's a dumb salary, but at the end of the day, at least he's playing.
No, I know. I'm
just doing his job.
I'm agreeing with you on that.
But Brett Kulak for me is a more true defensive defenseman.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I think that would be a mistake myself. But I don't know if anyone's taken CC anyway. So if you got to give up a defenseman, it's probably got.
You lose CC, the team just gets so much less attractive.
All right, let's leave it there. That's topic 1.
Hey, podcast listeners. My name is Larisse Campbell, and along with my co-host, former Olympic bobsledder Alicia Olson, I am so excited to introduce you to the Mother Pucker podcast. And if you love the Oilers like we do, you are going to love our show. It's just 2 gals who aren't afraid to drop the gloves and throw some hot takes about the boys in blue and orange. Whether you're a massive hockey fan like us or just looking for some new voices talking about the Oilers' blue line, or lack thereof, we promise the show is for you. So subscribe now and tell your friends. It's time for the Mother Pucker podcast.
All right, this is the part of the show here for topic 2 where I have not prepped these 2 gentlemen, and I love doing that because Elliott just always thrives when asked to improvise. We have a couple different game style segments we've played on the show. We've only played this game one time, and it went so well that it ended up on our year-end show. So it is not who said what, Elliott. Don't worry. We'll save that for another day. This is the other one.
What said who?
No, this is what is in a name. I have prepared for you several categories of actual sport team names. It's 2 truths and a lie. You tell me which of the 3 names I give you I made up and which 2 are real. They're categorized this week by sort of their league or where they belong. So I have a selection for you, and we will flip a coin, and the winner will get to pick first. The idea here is to see who can come out with the most correct of the 2 rounds they're going to have. And if it's a tie at the end of the day, you can split the trophy. I'm flipping a coin. Great. And Elliott, you have won the coin toss.
Heads.
I'm going to give you the 4 categories, and you may make the first selection. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So, would you like to guess team names from minor league baseball, high school sport team names, NCAA, and that could be multiple lower divisions, not just Div 1, or minor league hockey?
Which is going to be the least embarrassing to get wrong? I guess I'm going to go with high school.
High school. That's a good one because I feel like you won't know many of these high school names, to be fair. So you kind of have to just go off of what sounds the most ludicrous or the most realistic. And now it's kind of a poker game. You decide whether I went with the realistic one or I picked the ones to try to make it seem like that. All right, here they are for you. These are all real American high school athletic department team names. We have the Northwest Space Pioneers. We have the Watersmeet Nimrods. And we have the Centralia Biscuits.
Oh boy. So we got the Biscuits, the Space what?
Pioneers.
And the
Nimrods.
I think Nimrods is real.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the last one, whatever that one was.
The Centralia Biscuits.
Yeah, I don't believe the Biscuits are a real team.
All right. So you're correct. That is not a high school team name, but I always try to have a little bit of truth in there. There is a minor league hockey team with the name the Biscuits, which makes sense because it's a nickname for pucks. So I took that and I took a real high school name out of Central Florida, Centralia, put them together. You were correct. Good 1 point for you, Elliot. Don't you love this game now?
Sorry, the Nimrods is a real team.
It's a real team. Yeah, Watersmeet. It's a high school in Central Michigan. Watersmeet, spelled water Smeet. Watersmeet Nimrods. It's a classic right there. They won the state championship in basketball in 1988. So there's a banner somewhere hanging saying state champion Nimrods.
Yeah, I figured that was.
All right, 1 point to Elliot. Well done. Elliot, you're out to a roaring start. Braydon, you have three categories: minor league baseball, NCAA, or hockey. What do you got?
Tails. Let's do baseball.
Okay, minor league baseball. We have the Lee Valley Iron Pigs, the Fort Wayne Tin Cups, or the Pensacola Bottle Boys.
The Bottle Boys. That's not real. That's dumb as all. That's so dumb. The Bottle Boys?
The Bottle Boys.
Although it's got a bit of a ring to it now.
The Fort Wayne Tin Cups. The Lee Valley Iron Pigs.
Yeah, that one's real for sure. Let's go with the Bottle Boys.
You are correct. The Pensacola Bottle Boys. I'm not doing so well on my made-up names today. All right.
Bottle Boys was just too gendered.
Fair enough.
Bottle Boys.
I just don't understand why you have a baseball team named Tin Cups when that's like a golf reference.
A tin cup. Well, don't you wear a tin cup in baseball?
Let's hope not. That would be quite unpleasant.
Actually, I have a fun fact speaking of this. Did you know in the Mariners' 44 years of existence, they've experienced more ruptured testicles than playoff appearances?
Well, how many is that?
5 ruptured testicles and
on the
4 playoff appearances.
How many?
It says
more than one athlete.
I can't tell you how many athletes.
Mm-hmm. So it's like 3 guys.
Two and a half.
2 each, and then one poor bugger has only got 1. That's really unpleasant.
One bottle boy. He wasn't wearing a tin
And were
cup.
they all in the same season? Like, when did this occur? Can you imagine?
In their 44 years?
Yeah, I know. But of the 44 years,
it's probably in the same inning.
Was it like over the course of 5 different seasons, or like we had 2 1 year and then a decade no ruptured testicles and then another one? And
we need analytics for the ruptured testicles.
How many ruptured testicles per decade are we talking here?
Maybe one of our listeners can follow.
All right, Elliot.
On this.
This is your last category here. It's a tie right now, so we have to see if one. I don't have a tiebreaker ready, but I'll come up with something. NCAA or minor league hockey.
I thought we were just going to split the trophy, but I'll go with minor league hockey.
Okay. We have the St. John's Fog Devils, the Don Valley Thoroughblades, and the Odessa Jackalopes.
Odessa? So you got the Jackalopes,
From Ukraine,
the Thoroughblades, and the Fog Devils.
Yeah, I'll go with the last one again. That does not make any sense to me.
Which one?
Jackal.
The Odessa Jackalopes?
Yeah.
Is a real minor league hockey team.
Yeah.
Where is Odessa?
I believe
Ukraine?
no. I think it's in Florida or somewhere in the south. It previously was in the ECHL, and then they've also played in the IHL, the International Hockey League in the States.
Wow.
That's a real team. The one I made up was the Don Valley Thoroughblades, which I think was playing with the idea, like they like punny names, right? You got the Solar Bears, and now we have the Thoroughblades. I thought it was kind of clever.
Yeah, well done there, Jordan. You completely fooled me.
Yeah, bamboozled him.
The St. John's Fog Devils. I like that.
That one I knew was real.
That's got to be.
All right, Braydon, that leaves you with the NCAA.
All right, I picked the NCAA.
Perfect. All of these are not Div 1 teams. So probably schools
all of these are not real teams. Okay,
no.
Okay.
They're not Div 1 teams. So they're not teams you're particularly familiar with.
All right.
I don't think they've ever shown up in like a March Madness bracket. Let's just put it that way. Okay. These are, again, two of them are real. One of them is made up. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. We have the Webster Gorlocks.
Real.
Not Warlocks. Gorlocks.
Gorlocks, obviously.
The East Texas Polytech Quarter Horses.
Definitely real.
The South Dakota School of Mines and Technologies Hard Rockers.
Yeah, they're all real. The Hard Rockers?
Yes.
I feel like the school name itself isn't real. What was
The
it?
South Dakota School of Mines and Technologies.
Mines or mind?
Mines, not mimes. Mines. Mines and technology. I think that's the whole like hard rocker part, right? They're mining for things.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they just made landmines.
Yeah, I thought so too. But you said mime.
No, you just misheard me.
So mine.
Mines, like a gold mine.
Oh, not mines, like smart.
No, Braydon. There's no
I thought
university.
it was mimes, like mimes.
Yeah, let's go with the first one, the Goldilocks.
The Webster Gorlocks.
Yeah, that one's terrible.
That is 100% real.
What was the fake one? Obviously not the
East
Hard Rocks.
Texas Polytech Quarter Horses.
The quarter horses. Yeah, you don't need to be a quarter horse. You could be a horse.
So I got two right. I beat you twice. You guys each only got one. I think I win.
Wait, you
No,
were
we both
playing?
got one right. So it's 2-2.
Yeah, you each got one, and I got two. I stumped you twice. I'm the winner. We didn't even know I was playing.
I didn't even know we started the coin toss.
Anyway, that's another fun round of this game, whatever we call it.
What said who?
No, what's in a name? We'll play it again some other time, boys. Until then, let's jump to topic 3. Hey, if you're a fan of Formula One, then I've got the perfect podcast for you. The Pit Stop Podcast, presented by the Ordinary Podcasting Network. After every single race of the Formula One schedule, Jordan and Tyler will break it down, give you some news, analysis, insight, before answering your questions and setting you up for the next race. That's the Pit Stop Podcast, available everywhere you get your podcasts.
What's topic 3?
Hats off.
Oh, I don't have hats off.
All right, well, Elliott's coming up with his hats off because he was ill-prepared. I will go first. I would like to take my hat off to the new scoring record holder for the all-time NCAA record, women's basketball, Caitlin Clark. Just again, phenomenal career, phenomenal athlete. One of those great stories that has been really fun to watch from the outside as someone who doesn't follow her sport, doesn't follow NCAA women's basketball very much at all. But I think that we are seeing a real resurgence in terms of the importance and popularity of the women's game because they're just the headline after headline after headline this year. And for her, she's one of those athletes that's just going to be I'm really excited to see what's next for her as she leaves college and moves into a professional career and what's just there. So really excited for her. Hats off to Caitlin Clark. Braydon, you were shaking your head. Was that because I stole your hats off?
Yeah, Caitlin Clark is going to be the next great basketball player. She will go down as one of the best, greatest of all time. But I do have an alternative here, and it's more of an appreciation shout out, hats off. But I'm going to tip my hat to Daniel Ricciardo because he finished 13th, which is fine, at the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first F1 race. But I'm really tipping my hat to him because this grizzled vet held his own against a whiny, upset Yuki Tsunoda at the end of the race. If you haven't watched the race, watch the highlights, and don't forget to tune in to our other podcast and listen to Pit Stop Podcast. But my hat's off to Danny
Available
Ricciardo.
Tuesday. Yes, Britton, it was an entertaining into of what was kind of a very slow and less than what we call it on Pit Stop is like a high event or low event race. It was a very low event race.
Are we just going to see the same?
Just at the end. No, I think
same 1 to 20.
No, I think that we are seeing a lot of teams get a lot closer. So it's going to get more exciting as we get into the season and some upgrades come in, because the teams in the middle are actually going to compete. There's like 4 teams capable of second and third right now. And the way that Red Bull developed their car coming into this year, I think we are likely to see a much bigger fight up front. They really struggled with pace in qualifying. They just had a really good car for the actual race itself, but there's going to come a race here in the next too distant future where like somebody figures something out and they qualify better than them and it doesn't work out. I think that they will still be very dominant, but I don't think it'll be like last year. It just feels like everything's shifting here. We're talking about like Haas in round 3, and like teams are just, we're at the point in the development of these cars where like it's starting to get tighter, and that's why in 2 years then they introduce new power units, it'll open up again.
Right on. Well, my hat is tipping off to Daniel Ricciardo. If you ever need a smile, just go and look at Daniel Ricciardo.
Elliott, who are you taking your hat off to?
Last night, the Calgary Flames retired the number 34 for one Mika Kriprasov, who had an outstanding time playing for the Flames and just a good goalie all around. Obviously backstopped them to their Stanley Cup final appearance. Arguably, they should have won the cup that year.
If his ankle wasn't any bigger, they would have.
Or if they called the rules consistently in the NHL in that decade. But yeah, no, I think Mika Kriprasov, I'm sort of over how badly the Flames used to beat the Oilers. Well, he was there and all that he did. He was an outstanding goaltender, well-deserved honor of him on Saturday night. And I'll tip my hat off to him. I always have a place in my heart for goalies, and I think he was an outstanding competitor. Got to see a lot of him being an Oilers fan over the years, and that was sort of my prime hockey watching days. Really glad, and credit to the Flames organization for giving him a really good send-off. It was an excellent Saturday night and fully deserved. Hats off, Mika Kriprasov.
Did you see pre-game, or I guess the day before, whatever, they brought him in? They always do those kind of like ceremonies and dinners and all those things when they do an event like that, try to get the most out of a special night. But they brought the kid who had been little Kipper back at those games. You remember that from the early aughts?
In the stands,
and now he's like a 25-year-old guy, but they brought him in, and it was I just thought it was a good moment. It was a nice little throwback there. There's been a fair bit of nostalgia in the NHL in the last couple of weeks. The Green Men returning to Vancouver and all kinds of these throwbacks to the early years. But yeah, a good one, Elliott. I appreciated that one. Braydon, yours was good too. Thank you everybody for listening. We appreciate it. Please, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, share with a friend. Let us know what you think. And until next week, that was Hat-Trick. Hat-Trick is a member of the Ordinary Podcasting Network. It's produced every week by Jordan Dowler Coltman and Braydon Dowler Coltman. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network wishes to acknowledge that the lands on which our conversations take place include Treaty 6 territory, the traditional meeting ground and home for many indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and the Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. And we extend our appreciation for the opportunity to live, create, and share stories on these territories.
The Ordinary Podcasting Network intends to engage in conversations and dialogue which acknowledge that reconciliation is not a destination, but a journey, and that we remain committed to practicing our craft
in a decolonized space.